Hi, this is David Thornburg, President and CEO of the Committee of 70, Philadelphia's long-standing civic voice for better informed and better engaged voters, and as an advocate for better government here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. We have an election coming up May 21st. The way we look at it, running for office is a job interview where the candidates have a chance to meet with voters who essentially decide to hire them, fire them, renew their terms, what have you. And in that spirit, we're conducting a series of job interviews with city council candidates today, at-large candidates. And I'm glad to have with us today Sandra Dungee Glenn, who is a candidate for Democratic City Council at large, and look forward to talking with her. Just a little bit about her. She lives in University City. She is currently a policy advisor, to State Senator Vincent Hughes. She has been involved in a number of organizations that support stronger cities and better schools. She was a member of the School Reform Commission and a appointee to the Pennsylvania State Board of Education. This is her first campaign for council,
Yes.
so I'm sure it's eye-opening in many respects. Let's dive right in. First question, I guess, is the most basic, the most fundamental, and the most important. Why are you doing this? Why are you running for city council?
Well, I'm a lifelong Philadelphian, and I've had a chance to see the growth and the change in Philadelphia, and I think in many ways there are a lot of good things happening in our city. I love the vitality of Center City. I love now the cultural diversity and energy that's going on. But what's really struck me is Philadelphia, from my perspective, is becoming too comfortable with being a city of haves and have-nots. While on one hand, I see a lot of growth, I see a lot of energy, prosperity. On the other hand, in communities that I'm familiar with and where I come from in West Philadelphia, I see too many families literally being left behind, where their standard of living is going down as opposed to moving up, where with all the change and growth in the city, they don't seem to have any place in it. And that relates to whether there are children in our schools, and our schools, public schools, still struggling in terms of being able to deliver what we all know should be a 21st century education, whether we're talking about their parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to try to make ends meet and still slipping behind, whether we're talking about our neighborhoods where people who were very proud of their blocks and being homeowners are struggling to keep their homes up to par and are struggling in terms of being able to pay their taxes and property taxes and maintain their homes, who are feeling threatened by what we're calling gentrification all over, and not seeing that as an opportunity to be a part of something new, but see that as being shut out from a city that they used to feel was included them.
Right.
And those are some of the things, and I know that we can do better and we can do something different, because I think there is room enough and there is enough opportunity that everybody should have a chance to benefit from it. And I think it's incumbent on city government and city leadership to chart a direction and outline the policies that make that possible. And that's really what at-large council members are responsible for.
You said the magic word policy, so that's which to my mind is the how question. Points been made over the years. We rarely disagree on the outcomes that we like, but we have fierce disagreements on how we get there.
Sure.
So what are the 2 or 3 things from sort of a policy standpoint that you think would give us the most amount of leverage to improve the lives of the kind of people that you're talking about?
Well, clearly there has to be a rethinking about what we think about economic opportunities. And that's on both sides in terms of job creation and in terms of business creation and growth. African American businesses make up less than 3% of the businesses here in Philadelphia. African Americans are 44% of the population. There's a big disparity there. So when you think about inclusion and opportunity, even in terms of being able to be viable entrepreneurs in the city, something different has to be done that helps the access to capital, helps with availability of contracts, and how we think about who and where we're citing our business growth. So that's a piece of it, business. On the job side, there has been a call for raising minimum wage to $15 an hour. I think that should be something that we heed, because we have to create a better floor for families. And then in terms of access to jobs, from what I've read, we have jobs available. You know, the last report I read, there were about 50,000 jobs, good paying jobs available in Philadelphia. We have about 200,000 of our young and not so young folks who are illiterate. So even with available jobs, if we don't have people ready for those jobs, nothing's going to change. So I think our city has to make a serious reinvestment in developing our people. Citywide adult literacy has to be that we have to have a network of literacy programs. We have some, but I think we have to grow that and figure out how we create a line system using our community colleges, our pre-K to 12 system, colleges and universities, community organizations to carry that out. I think that's a part of it. We have a number of folks we know who are returning citizens that need to be strengthened in terms of their skills, so expungement programs and continuing education. So I think those are some of the policy initiatives that, even though we have pieces of it, I think we have to do better to align what's out there and then fill in the gaps in terms of continuing to build really a policy framework that addresses a continuum of job development, job training, employment, job growth, skills development, as well as business development, from our neighborhood corridors to bringing in large new businesses, making sure they're paying livable wages, and protecting workers' rights. So those are some of the issues that I think we need to take on.
Got it. So let's turn to your own experience, your own past. What are the 2-3 things, a short list of things that you are most proud of that you've been able to accomplish over the years that have improved the life of Philadelphians or particular communities within Philadelphia? What would you like voters to know about your record?
Well, I've been blessed to spend most of my adult life in public service. I started out as an organizer with a group called Philipposh, Philadelphia Area Project on Occupational Safety and Health, and that was involved with workers' rights to be safe on the job. So training and helping workers with contract language. So that got me very involved with unions. I've run a nonprofit. And I think my work at the nonprofit is one of the areas that I would say, because we were working directly in neighborhoods with communities here in Philadelphia, but in other parts of the country, working with returning citizens. And we showed that we could do a workforce and job development program that really did give people skills to go off and get employment. Working with at-risk youth in middle schools and doing a mentoring and leadership development program that really helped them grow and move on to high school and complete high school. So showing that working in communities, there are real answers, that these things are solvable. So that was one thing. I think my other great area of pride, I guess, is my work with the school district as a member of the school board, appointed by Mayor Street, and then appointed to the School Reform Commission.
Remind me your tenure.
2000, I was appointed by Mayor Street to the school board in 2000, and I served on our School Reform Commission from January of 2002 till I believe about April of 2009, both as a member of the SRC and as chair. And during my tenure, we implemented a mandatory requirement around African American history be taught in our schools. I think that's very important, since the majority of our children are African American children in our school district. We also were able to, during those years, create art and music in every school. We put that in through our budget, as well as reducing class sizes. And what that taught me was, if you're clear about your priorities and where you're trying to go, then you can align your resources. Even if they're not adequate, you can really make tough choices to make sure that the critical things that you believe are needed are getting done. And so that gave me a chance to work with parents and families all over the city, from the Northeast to South Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, and we built some new schools even. My elementary school was over 100 years old, so we replaced and built a new Barry School in West Philadelphia that's serving that community, a new West Philadelphia High School. And again, showing the community that change is possible. And I think the message from that is that you're worth it, that neighborhoods that are often left out need to understand, and people need to really believe that you are valuable too, and that we need to give equal and equitable value and attention to those communities as we do other parts of our city.
So let me turn to, let's fast forward, pretend, well, I'm sure you hope it's more than pretend, you get elected city council at large, you're one of 17, 7 at large, 10 district members. Try to give us a sense of, as you thought about it, like what kind of council person would you be, and how does that draw on the roles that you've played in community leadership or other kinds of positions? because once you get elected, there's no particular job description. You can be a policy person, you can be a constituent service person, you can be you can work more internally in council. But what's your sense of how would you fulfill that role?
Well, I think I will be policy driven, but community informed. Meaning that I understand and I'm very comfortable reading data and understanding best practices, and my experience on the school district gave me great familiarity with budgets and understanding how budgets are really basically your priorities and numbers. So that part of the job, I think I would be comfortable getting into. I believe that as a council member at large, my responsibility really is to look at the city as a whole and try to pull from all the various issues we have maybe in individual communities, what are the common threads that we really need to address? And so there would be a policy agenda, and mine would be moving our families out of poverty, really creating a better economic floor for our communities and our families here. And again, that would relate to education issues and job development, business development, some work around criminal justice reform. I think Larry Krasner is moving in the right direction. But I couple that with that still needs to be informed by what's happening on the ground. So I think my organizing background would make me very comfortable going out and talking with constituents all around the city to hear, all right, this sounds like a good idea, but when we really put it into play, how does it work in your neighborhood? What would you see? What do you want to see out of it? And walking into rooms where sometimes it may be uncomfortable conversations, but being comfortable with walking through that, because in the end, I think people respect you, even if you don't agree with them, when they know you've heard them. And you can come back and say, well, I hear you, and what you say makes some sense, but here's some other things you may not be aware of. That kind of give and take, people really value that. And so I think that would be part of my grounding in council.
Let me put this to you. Is there a measure, an idea that you would never vote for? And is there alternatively something that, if you had to pick one thing that you would be bound and determined to accomplish in a 4-year period, what might that be? So a never and always, if you will.
Well, my intention would be to never vote for regressive taxes that really create additional burdens on.
We have a lot of regressive taxes.
I know, and I think that's why I think we see a lot of what we see in terms of the economic struggles of our families here, because we do. The burden is falling on a very limited number of people, and unfairly, because those are usually folks who are least able to exercise their options, either going other places or moving or having discretionary income. So I hope I would never contribute to that.
So how about what would you be bound and determined to try to accomplish?
I'm bound and determined to accomplish this focus on what I consider neighborhood-based economic development. I know I'm known for education, if you would, and that goes through everything that I care about. But this idea of building wealth and putting value back in our communities through a much more vibrant business activity. And I think there are opportunities now with some of the issues around this qualified opportunity zones and this whole capital that's going to be coming into some of our cities through what was something that was done with the federal tax code recently. Is going to create a lot of wealth and capital coming into cities like Philadelphia. And again, it's going to be a question of where is that driven? It's either going to accelerate gentrification, or it really could be invested in a way that there is a great social impact. And I really want to spend time and my energy focused on that, because I think that's something that could have a transformational impact on a lot of our neighborhoods.
Good. Last bucket of things is we'll call them generally political reforms. We're concerned, and I think we hear from a lot of folks, there's a concern that, in quotes, that City Hall's broken. And that's just not a comment on the people who work there, the processes that happen in City Hall. It's a comment on the political process. Whether our processes are as open and inclusive and accessible as they could be. It involves things like councilman prerogative, transparency in council. When it comes to, it would be on your watch where we would draw new council districts after the 2020 census. That's been a pretty insular process that shuts a lot of people out. So which of those do you think is important? Where do you stand? What do you hear? You're an endorsed candidate by the Democratic Party. Is that?
Yes and no. I was
Okay.
endorsed by the policy committee on one day, and then in the final, I guess, push or the final slate that was presented to the body, I was not. So,
That's a new one.
yeah, that was very interesting. But I will take it that they did, and they did support, and I was told that I had the most support among the policy committee. But something happened on the way to the forum. So we won't get into that, really figuring out what that
But
means.
let me
But
just
just,
say that to me,
mhm,
that's an illustration of
of
the
the
problem.
problem. Yeah, yeah, I
In
would
some
agree.
places,
Hmm.
committee people vote on endorsements. It's all out in the air. We can see who wins, who loses. There's none
Hmm.
of this kind of last minute,
Changing
you
and
know.
maneuvering. So and I do think transparency is very important. I think what we see, and we often criticize voters for not being engaged, I think really is a very rational decision by them because
Mhm.
what they see is not something they want to be a part of. They don't feel that voting has had an impact on their lives, even though we know, I think people, those of us involved in government and policy knows that every day there are decisions that are impacting people. They don't see it because of the way it's presented to them or not presented to them, meaning oftentimes it's only after the fact that they even know something is going on. So I think the idea of city council having even more transparency. I know in the last couple of years, council members have taken the budget process on the road,
Mhm.
meaning that they've gone out in the communities and done it. How we use media, because people are so tuned in now to social media and digital media, how we can think about using that to just bring it right into your home,
Yep.
popping up maybe even as little ads or spots about,
Mhm.
did you know your highlights from today's city council session? Thinking about things like that. Even now, I've been off the SRC for 10 years, but people still tell me about those late night. I think on cable television, they still show some of
Well,
the the late
I was
night
going to say it was
sessions from our.
entertaining. I'm not sure it always felt productive.
Maybe not, but that people pay attention to things like
Yeah.
that. So I think the idea of bringing government closer to the community is very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And I think that would be one of the things that I would like to spend
Okay.
time on and energy on.
Terrific. We've got to put a wrap on this conversation,
Mhm.
but Sandra, thank you for being with
Thank you.
us and
Sure.
sharing your thoughts with everyone we can find out there in
Absolutely.
the wild world of the internet. We do have an election coming up May 21st, primary election. So right now, make a plan, get others to make a plan, figure out where and when and how you're going to vote on election day. If you want to know more, turn to our website, 70.org, to take a look at our voter guides. Also, you can download our We Vote app on your phone, which puts in the palm of your hands everything you need to know to make yourself a super voter and a super citizen. Thanks again to Sandra Dungee Glenn. Thanks to the Thomas Skelton Harrison Foundation for helping to support this effort. And we'll see you at the polls on May 21st.